Thanks. Last one. Thanks for coming. Unless you're watching this later, then I don't know which order it is. Cedric's here. All these friends are. Wow. Thanks for coming, everyone. All right. So this talk actually has two parts. The first part is right now, this talk, and the second one is homework to go mod some routers and mini routers and do some cool stuff. So that will be an exercise left to the reader. These images also had two parts. What you're looking at is far, far away, near Lake Superior, this place called the Ice Caves. But the first step was getting there and then surviving there, which was this. And everyone that has seen this image says that's the most green screen looking image possible, but I swear I was there. I can give you the originals, and yeah, just believe me. There's even other ones. Yeah, that tape was never supposed to be there. It was ruining everything. Now we're perfect. Thank you. No, this talk is great. And so I've given this before, and usually here I say lots and lots of things about me, but all you need to know is that's me. It's not a green screen, and I love GOTO. So let's jump right into modding. Why modding? How many of you have ever modified devices or hardware or cars? Nice. If you're doing something that is not what the manufacturer or the vendor originally intended it to do, that's modding. Often people think of it merely as something confined to computer modding, overclocking as a common one. Very, very long ago, time far, far away, I took my 200 megahertz system and cranked up to 233, and boy, that was awesome. But now we have a whole new degree of modding. But really, it could apply to many, many devices and anything that is generally different than the vendor's original intent. But I think that there's something that's much more interesting about modding than the act of just adding features. It's about being curious and seeking depth, trying to tinker and figure out what really is under the hood. And sometimes magical things happen. So I'm going to go through a few examples in my history that have nothing to do with anything else, and then we'll go into some really cool hardware of the network variety, modding, and security and privacy. So Xbox, of course, being the first one, we'll talk a little bit about that more later. I think you can actually almost see the Seagate, I think 200 gig drive that I swapped out for whatever was there originally. And this is Xbox One, which I know is before the one that was before the one that's discontinued, and it's old, but so cool. This was the one that started a lot. And a long time before that, there was this ancient thing called the TI-85, but I don't think they actually changed these things ever. So there's a different number, but it's almost exactly the same. And they gave me this 2.5 millimeter cable with it, so I could connect to my friends, and I don't know what we were supposed to do, like transfer something. But I wanted to be able to connect it to a computer so that I could do a little bit more, and maybe store a little bit more, and maybe there were some exams or AP tests, and like, why would I need to ever memorize these physics equations? I could derive them, but that just takes too much time. So let's just put them on the calculator, and had a nice menuing system to look up what I needed. You know, V equals V0 plus 1/2 AT. So I don't want to memorize that. So that was one of my fun hacks. And it was like, I think I have even the, I'm walking a little, is that okay? The Zener diode that was in between the couple wires, and you put it to one of those things called a parallel port, right? What was it, 25 pin, I think? Man, that was nuts. When we had fat peripherals, it worked. But then there's an even easier one, the super old relic that started it all. But what could you do with this? Probably a lot. And here's a couple. The first one, when I did this talk originally, I thought about how, I really just, I love karaoke, man. And I just wanted to actually change some of the words and get the background music, but to actually get music, like the tracked versions that are created without vocals or without other things, probably costs like, I don't know, infinity money from when I was in high school or grade school for royalties. So if you take the headphone and that jack, that 3.5 millimeter, and you pull it out like slightly, not all the way. Some people are nodding, like they know this, right? You pull it out a little bit, and there's an impedance mismatch, and it turns out that it cancels out the frequencies, which are mostly vocals and a few other things, and you just kind of get the background noise. So then you pump it into those old school digital deals and record your own stuff and slow it down and speed it up, and it was great. So that's my Walkman mod. So let's jump back to our old Xbox. We talked about the upgraded storage. Now you get to see a little zoom in on the PCB hanging out there with a few little dip switches. Allows you to manipulate, boot. I think you could see a little enable, disable. You could go, in the old days, we thought, hey, if you break one, you should at least have a backup. It was good to have, these things cost a reasonable amount of money. So that gave you access to a whole plethora of features. And it started to actually spawn an ecosystem. How many of us have some sort of streaming device playing media of some kind from some service, like our home, Netflix? Okay, so we have Roku, Apple TV, etc., Chromecast. Does anyone actually use something which everyone now calls Kodi? Kodi? Anyone do Kodi? Oh, Kodi. Oh, you watching some NHL cord cutters? Okay, I hear you. XBMC, Xbox Media. Oh yeah, now we have some takers, right? XBMC, Xbox Media Center, right? A long time ago. This started it all, okay? The fact that we were lazy, and we used to, before streaming, have this crazy thing like a small disc that you had to get out of your chair and out of the couch and walk over and press the button and then wait for the ejection. That took forever, so slow, and then pull out a disk and put in another disk. Why would you do that when you could just rip it to the drives that you enlarged? You embiggened it, and it was perfectly cromulent at that point. So it's amazing that something that simple, like modding this, very specific game, but general purpose hardware machine to something that could be more general purpose, spawns a media player ecosystem that now we all take for granted. And in fact, because it is open source, it is the backing engine behind some of the smaller, actual smart TV panels. So let's jump into something more fun. Anyone recognize this device? Anyone have this device still? Last time I did this talk, I had it with me, so it was good. You could vividly see it, because I gave this to university students, and I was unclear. I'm like, maybe your old uncle or grandfather had this in their closet. I wasn't sure on the gap of range. No, but I think this is around 2001, 2, 3, right? Because this was the first to have wireless G. Really interesting things happened. And so I was already used to modifying things like my computer from its default operating system to Linux. But this was something completely different, a networking device. Things that are not too different from the big iron, many, many thousands of dollars things. So in this case, Lifehacker actually popularized, and there was an article, turn your $60 router into a $600 router. Some of you probably, now it triggers that memory when Lifehacker was one of the most popular. And it was the birth of yet another ecosystem where you could suddenly have features unavailable to the masses. It was just truly amazing. And we'll get back to this a little bit later. But first, we have to worry a little bit. Back to the ice caves. So yeah, this is a real thing. It was really dangerous. That's my buddy Kyle, but not that buddy Kyle, because he's wearing an Illinois sweatshirt, so clearly it's not him, because otherwise, a lot of problems with those Big Ten competitions. And we had ice cleats, these things that you strapped on your boots with teeth so it was kind of dangerous. But the internet's really dangerous too. So I'm going to ask a few questions. Since it's a privacy talk, it's okay to remain anonymous and not answer. The first one is going to be a little different than what I asked last time. How many have ever used Wi-Fi for any purpose in any way? Wi-Fi. Did you ever use Wi-Fi? Okay, this is the check for digital recluses. Whoa, we have some people that are just total digital wow, that's cool. Good. Stay on your island. You're probably safe. If it's unplugged, it's probably going to be safe. But then how many are using internet like in a coffee shop, at the library? Did you use the Weston internet here? Okay, it's okay if you don't want to answer. Check the tweets from Boaz, I believe, and we'll get a little bit more into this later, but this is something that just happened today where someone may have leveraged the ideas in this talk and just basically captured all of your traffic. And he has images and cookies and everything you were looking at, no joke. He intercepted every single SSID, and there were something like 300. And of course, I won't name names. You'll have to find that for yourself. This is a privacy talk. So we're thinking about this and wondering, is it safe? And we know about many of the dangers. And last time I gave this talk, we did some interaction just to see how much the university kids were familiar with, and they came up with great things, like someone said fire sheep. That was a great example. We learned so much when even Yahoo Mail did not have HTTPS for everything, almost everything out there, things that you implicitly believed this would be secure. And your login page was definitely secure, and it's green and things are checked, and you like printed out big hashes and things, and you compared it with your friends. You're like, yeah, everything's great. But then once you get past the login, it was in the clear. This is nuts. And luckily, things like those research tools helped spawn or actually provide enough pressure upon these vendors and services which did not previously use HTTPS to finally enable it. However, there's something else. What if you're on Weston Wi-Fi and you've got all your traffic intercepted with this interesting device by this interesting person that happened here today, and it's HTTPS and you think you're fine? What else could be wrong? We'll do some interaction. You could shout out stuff like everything is fully encrypted in you're just talking web browsing for a second, HTTPS. What other concern may you have with using an internet connection that is not one that you control all devices? Cedric has one. Ooh. Yes, that is good. So you'll still leak your DNS, which I like that one a lot because we'll hopefully fix that. And you maybe will have some certs where you didn't print out like all the codes and like check with all your friends and then like call the authority on certs or something with the double key signing party and like did this match, and it was self-signed, and then you thought you were going to like buy the coolest thing on eBay like service.com, and really it was a malicious site. Yes, that's absolutely true. But let's go to the leaking DNS for a second. I had a favorite physics professor that always, whenever he wanted to use an example of something that was just completely different from science, he said underwater basket weaving. So he said, all the physics majors are great, and they're geniuses compared to the underwater basket weaving majors. So, you know what? Somehow I don't feel as bad. Whatever it is, it may be interesting. And if you're going to underwaterbasketweaving.org, even if it's encrypted with HTTPS, they've captured that you're going there. They captured the byte counts at time durations, at intervals, where all kinds of interesting things. Maybe where you are in the world. Could that do anything? Could that be of any concern? Yeah. It's just the metadata. Of course, metadata doesn't contain, but maybe I could never potentially, imagine the library, Starbucks, Weston Wi-Fi, nation state to ever discriminate in any way against underwater basket weavers. They're just saying like, mine was blue, my water was salty, the weaving was great. But I don't know how this information could be used. And what if just the act of hitting that DNS is used in ways you didn't expect? What if your experience on the internet is altered based on your region? These are all potential concerns. There are so many of them. They're vast. So we can also talk about more later, but this is a fun talk, so it's got to be fun enough on a pace. So let's jump into the safety. Now, see, it was so dangerous. I don't feel like you're safe to leave the room. Like you can if it's an emergency, but ask permission, because now like I'm compelled to make sure that you have some way to mitigate all of these risks. Okay, so lots of us here know about this. A VPN, you probably use it for work, but of course it's Bob and Alice. It always is Bob and Alice. I don't know why, it's security. But the interesting thing is you can tunnel. You can tunnel with TCP, you can tunnel with UDP. One of them is not such a great choice because when you have misses and then it's like, but the TCP inside the TCP, oof. But at least it's good that it's versatile because different network providers and different places you go can use, these allow different possibilities. And it's great that you can access resources from either side, including potentially the internet, as well as shares, as well as printers if people use printers or things like that. And of course, the eavesdropper sees just gibberish. But in a true VPN, which we'll get to, should DNS go where? You would prefer it goes in the tunnel, right? Maybe. It may not, right? Depends on your tech. So we'll get to some of the different techs in a second here. So we talked about VPN in general, why it's interesting in terms of its encapsulation, and you can access a number of resources. It was great when we did not yet have everything fully in the cloud, always with infinite bits, and you could get your stuff at home, which is one of my primary and first use cases for things like this. I just want to get to resources at home. See, I'm one that is quite baffled. I'm not baffled by the cloud. The cloud is natural to me. The fact that I have this much power in here is way more confusing to me, because I always thought that you would have to access remote resources to get all this power. So I was always doing that, and I was always trying to use something like a tunneling to get access to those. So we know about them, and there's a few reasons we should talk about the different technologies, at least at a high level, but we could always get into more. So PPTP, kind of broken. Really probably don't use it unless you mostly don't care and you're just trying to watch some cool sports or something that you want to just get it through. And it just happens to be very highly compatible because it's old and garbage. L2TP, okay, like not broken yet. Attacks don't get weaker, they always get stronger. But OpenVPN is really interesting because it is so much more open, less encumbered. It's just you have to have this extra client. But there's clients for everything. So let's see if this works. I am going to do this. Do you guys know that all you have to do is Google IP and you get your IP? That's a cool one. So then I just had this ready to go. Where am I? It thinks that I'm in Chicago, but it also doesn't think I'm actually at the Westin. So I'm going to do something here. Let me see if I can get my cursor over to there. So let's go ahead, and I'm sure most of you have observed this, but it was much more impressive when, where should we go? We should go to, Canada. There's so many fun Canadians here, Dave just went to his talk. All right, so of course, it should be no surprise to see what happens. That changed, and where am I? Whoa. Yeah, I'm in Toronto. Toronto has different rules about things, so it may be advantageous. And of course, this is, if you're wondering, this is just a nice little plug-in to network manager here for Linux, but you can do it in many, many different ways. And these guys are all, turns out to be OpenVPN, which is nice. And let's make sure I go back to the right one. Awesome. So it's a great choice just because it is so versatile. And the live demo actually worked. But now let's talk about something quite fun. This box. How did this box start so much? Like, what is the magic of open source anyway? Well, in June 2003, there were some people on the kernel, Linux kernel, that is mailing list, that started sniffing around this really cool new device that just came out that was the first one that did G when G was a great new technology. Awesome. And they found a few little nuggets that looked like Linux. And Linux, do people know what GPL is? Does anyone know, do people know what copyleft is? Okay. So when this discovery is made, and Linksys, pre-purchased by the other company, Cisco, right, was selling this as a commercial product, straight up, as just buy it, it's the latest and greatest, it does wireless G, and that's it. The manual just said some things like turn it on, hopefully it works, but I didn't see any code or attribution or anything interesting in there. So the kernel devs said, whoa, 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 Stallman taught us something and inserted into a country where we like contracts a lot. We like to actually adhere to and enforce them, at least for most people. This copyleft thing says you can't do that without having the code open as well. So it wasn't too much after that, in July, when suddenly whatever disputes occurred, they backed down, they gave the code out. And now suddenly you have specific drivers and things you need for this chipset that did like the basic garbage of nonsense in DHCP and get a network going and WPA, whatever, the one that probably broke, or, oh my God, all those scary things that are long gone. But then you could upgrade it when the explosion of the community gets access to it and adds WPA2, different tunneling possibilities, embedded SSHD, everything fun happened. And what's really interesting about this, besides the fact that you're taking this dinky, inexpensive device and adding features that are only available to big iron corporate customers for thousands and thousands of dollars, is that you can suddenly explode an ecosystem that we're used to now, because we have things like new gadgets and app stores, and then the watches that make a whole new app store, and then a new language, and then you have to rewrite everything, and then like the new platform comes out and everyone has to make like the fart app again. I mean, whatever. But this was one of the first ones. It was great. And suddenly everything was available. So let's talk about the variants. Many of you probably have heard of just the WRT name, or DDWRT, or Tomato, or others. But OpenWRT is the focus of this talk and is quite interesting because it's just so open, has a very good package manager, very Linux-like, very, very small. So one aspect and constraining aspect of these devices is you're not in the scale of gigabytes, but rather very, very few megabytes in terms of storage and memory and processing capability. So you do actually want to be lean. It's not just like us crazy financial people saying it's got to be low latency, it's got to be fast. It's like you only have 16 meg. Sorry, there's only so much you could do. Or even the one I have. Ooh, I have to get that out soon. Where you may only have 4 or even fewer megabytes, not gigabytes, megabytes of memory. And of course, the access is great with web command line, and we learned a lot from it. So let's look at one of these. What did I do with it? It was supposed to be right here. It is. The reason when we did this talk as a workshop that we selected this guy was mainly because it's a for real product that can be purchased in a shrink wrap version, in the United States as a device that does the things that are on this slide. And it's kind of cool because then you're really altering it from the original vendor's intent. And it has a battery, so you can just flip it on, right? No wires required. And this one, even if you don't mod it at all, you could still do interesting things. You can still get the NAT hardware aspect of it, which is a little firewallish right away, because we know over time there were variants of Windows XP before Service Pack 2 and crazy things where there was no such firewall and everything was open, and wow, it was a scary world. So some of the use cases that you would not anticipate, easy ones are you just want to access a network, maybe it's the Westin, maybe it's in-flight Wi-Fi, and then broadcast your own Wi-Fi network, or maybe hardwire it if you're cool like that. And then you don't have to follow their restrictions. What if you're of course, they finally changed it with the accounts. But what if the in-flight Wi-Fi is pay once per MAC address? This is one MAC address. That's quite nice. But then my former boss told me another good use case I didn't anticipate. And that's what's great about the tinkering, the modding. You just keep building on these. He said, when you bring your little, if it's a Roku stick or whatever media streamer you have to the hotel, and you plug it into the HDMI, everything's great until you want to, get the Wi-Fi connection and everything. And if it's a Chromecast, we know that you have to control it with your phone. So why not just do it all on this personal network, and then have that other radio access the network with the internet connection, and that's quite nice. There was another good one I wanted. That's okay. We'll go back to it. So let's look at how it all comes together. Essentially, you combine the previous lesson about VPN and a device. It need not be this travel router. That was just one use case. It could be the larger WRT home version, and suddenly you're nice and secure. Even your DNS, all through there. So we got the plane, we got the hotel, we got the Chromecast. There's other stuff. We'll think of add-ons in a bit. So first, let's talk about the paradox of choice. I only gave you 2 examples to start, this TP-Link version and the Linksys. Others may find really interesting ways to build this out of, say, a Raspberry Pi. There's another one, GL-iNet, that is more suited exactly for this purpose, and has it basically just has a little bit more storage and is beefier. So I did not yet accomplish the task of the Raspberry Pi version, because when we actually bought routers for the workshop version before, and cost was a constraint. So think about this when you go to part 2 and build it for yourself, and do a little research to see what's the most effective, because they all have a few different features. Wait, I just remembered it. It's great. The other really cool thing, little known fact, very few hotels have physical Ethernet ports anymore, but some do. And it's often the case that when you use the Ethernet port, which a lot of these devices have, at the hotel, they do not apply the restrictions that they do on Wi-Fi. So while the Wi-Fi is like 10 Mbit per, the Ethernet port's like full stream, just like the fire hose internet. You're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I got fiber and no one else does, and then you're suddenly killing all their stream. It's great. Like, I'll just upload these, like volumes of videos that I had just sitting here. So try that. I mean, there's so many interesting ways you could tinker. All right, but I'd feel bad if I didn't give you a little more detail about the hack that you didn't realize occurred until you looked at this Twitter stream. When I did this talk the last time, I wanted to keep it clean. I wanted to keep the youth curious, but not necessarily let them find the danger on their own, not necessarily introduce it to them. But for this one, I just have to give you the image of it. This is a product, the Wi-Fi Pineapple, from the group that basically makes only more black hat and less researchy type things to do with it, with 2 radios. And it turns out that John, oops, I said his name, added a third, because there's a USB slot on the other side, and you can have one listening or connected even to one Wi-Fi, one scanning for other Wi-Fis to start pulling, and one broadcasting for a new one. And you could have anything you want in there. This one, there's a micro SD slot. It can capture as much space as, 200 gig? You could just keep loading and loading and loading. Terrifying. So there is a dark side, and it's good to know that it exists. If you want to use it, that's fine. Hopefully before you're 18 and the record is expunged and things like that. So this was intended to be quite short because it's the end of the day, but we can have some fun. There's attributions. I tried to be cool here. What other questions, ideas, stories, things do you have in your routing, modding past in security and privacy world? Do you have actual submitted questions? Check the brain. the brainscan.gotocon. I know, speaker brain, but it's come on. It's really reading my thoughts. I'm not very comfortable with it. I'm still perfecting my helmet thing with the Faraday cage because I think tinfoil may just actually amplify. No questions. Okay. Any live questions? Anything? Oh yeah, sure. That's great. I like it a lot. And I'm going to start, and then people can correct me if they have other ideas. SSH tunneling is, first of all, brilliant on its own. Like everyone, if you don't know -L-R, totally learn it. It operates on both ends. Whoa. You know what? Keep it secret from the people that are afraid of, or like trying to protect you from security, but it's powerful, man. So when you make that connection, stuff flows, and it can flow either way. I did that as well for quite a while. And a long time ago with browsers of ancient history, DNS did not flow through. But then if you go and you change the setting and everything works, so now you're safe. Good. So your question is essentially, you have your SSH tunnel, which is very, very clearly like machine to machine and secure. We know about that. And a certain port locally that your browser knows about because you set it up in the config is sending all the traffic there, even including DNS. It comes out on the other server-side machines. So I think that's okay for the browser. But what about the other stuff? There's other, like, are you running an operating system that is just a browser and nothing else? Like, definitely nothing else? Yes, so definitely hopping. So the description for the microphone people is that you're able to hop through that host as a jump point to get to other hosts, to do remote desktop connections. These are all very useful. And what I was referring to is the host where you're initiating the SSH connection and you're tunneling through that SSH connection and the browser connections, and maybe other ports are set up to tunnel. What if, let's say, you have an operating system that sometimes has a different program that's not a browser that wants to update itself? Or what if you have another piece of software that uses the internet in any way and you don't have it connected to the proxy, right, et cetera? So if you had the proxy at the system level, it might be okay. But if you have anything else and the update mechanism does not have digital cert signing awesomeness, hashing and checking all of that, then you could have an interceptor, a man in the middle, and virulent nonsense. And basically, this, I'm glad I left this slide up. This device in evil mode can just attack all JavaScript. jQuery, like anything that's on pages, if you end up getting a browser involved with this stuff, it will fake you out. I mean, this is the supreme level of phishing. It could do anything because browsers are so powerful now, and once you have JavaScript doing all the interesting things that our speakers talk about JavaScript doing, and this device is rewriting it, you're kind of toast. So basically the point is what you're doing is great, but you launch even one other thing that's not using the tunnel, and you're toast. But if you do the OpenVPN style, the client, the greatest thing about some of the clients is that they have options such that internet activity can be blocked if it's not on the VPN. Or on the Android one, there's a when I restart my phone, reestablish. Or what should it do in timeout scenarios? Like when you're in the elevator, you lose connection, it comes back. How long should it retry? So these are interesting safety features to compare and contrast. Basically, like, I love what you did. I did that for years and years and years, and then I just fully switched to OpenVPN for all the use cases you described, because then it's just easier. You don't actually have to configure port by port. Did that answer your question? Are you excited about OpenVPN now? Okay. That's cool. I mean, it can go either way. They're all quite good. Are we out of time? Was there, I thought I saw maybe one more. Oh, there wasn't. Well, they were, so the question was about the creepy factor of people watching you on the internet. And it is well known that pretty large provider, turns out to be Comcast, right, rewrites web pages. If it's not HTTPS, they definitely do that. It's definitely known. And so that is a interesting creepy factor. If you tunnel out through something that's not Comcast, then you'll be okay. And then we probably should have mentioned at a certain point that this whole different region thing that we demonstrated, there are reasons why you may want to be in a different region. I kind of glossed over that if you go to certain places further out from where we are now, and you go to YouTube, and it's permitted to go to YouTube, where maybe Facebook is blocked, or maybe Gmail is blocked, but maybe YouTube is allowed, you don't always get the same content. And that's kind of a human digital rights issue that I think this helps with. But of course, there's this, so you could say, get me access to the videos I want, things like that. But there's this interesting thing that just happened more recently with Netflix, right? Because if you use a known VPN provider, then they're basically blocking you. So if you go to a different country and you try to play a certain content item that they don't have available for that region, they say, sorry, you're in the wrong region. Then you VPN in to the right region, and it says, sorry, you're on VPN. Drat, fool. I mean, you feel like foiled again. But the simple answer is, at home or at grandma's house or at your parents' house or at a friend's house, you have your basic open VPN server running. So now, or at home, right? You basically are at home. Of course, this requires a heavy upstream speed if you think about the way the network flow is going, if you're doing things like video. But for most things, it's quite good. And gigabit's almost here. In Chicago, AT&T, I think, has gigabit. And who knows? Maybe we'll be lucky and like magic will happen and fiber comes Google. Yeah, go ahead. So lots of people do that. The question was, do they block EC2 ranges? And that's a great hack, I feel like, because they really can't, right? Or it may be a cat and mouse game, but I don't see how they could. So if you run your own, and lots of people think about doing this as a very low cost, people, like a micro or a free edition, and you're using it so little, and it's just an IP block there. There's no way to tell that there's any difference. There's no way to tell that you're tunneling. It's just emerging from one of these two places in America. So yeah, except that doesn't it cost more? Wait, what? Oh, yeah. Bedra? No. Yeah. So the question was, or the comment was that AWS, there's so much that's well known about the ranges, and it's pretty easy to block if they want to. But in like the case of actual content providers, I'm not familiar with any that are yet, or if they are. But it's pretty easy to jump around, I bet. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is a great question. It's like, isn't it easy to defeat Tor, even though we thought not that long ago that it was great and the layers are great, and there are papers written about exactly that, and it definitely, like in a research sense, has been proven to be not that hard, and in a like actual knowledge acquisition sense about nation states, it's been pretty well verified and documented that the exit nodes are controlled in ways that you may not have expected. Sure.
Finding where the source is, if you just like look at packet size and time, like as it flows.
Yeah. So if you're omniscient, which certain agencies and things are, from the level of like ability to, well, maybe they just light split with Prism all of the traffic from really big backbone-y points, then don't they have enough information just from packet analysis and rates? Absolutely. Yes. But yeah. So don't feel bad. There's always hope. There are always interesting ways. Cedric's got some. So the question was about when you have the login page thing, whatever it is. It may be free or accept terms or pay or give me your username, but it's challenging because the creds and the cert process and not EV, not even HEV, all these things, even though certs are easy and we have Let's Encrypt now and it's changed the world, EFF is great, they still have these technical challenges, and GoGo's in Chicago, so maybe we can track someone down and see like where they are. But forget it, let's say that the server side stays all sorts of crappy and we hate them. Why not, and some of these exist out there, why not write scripts so that when you have your hacked travel router and it already wants to connect to VPN, but first it has to do some paywall off, accept terms, whatever. Why not have that get scripted, right? Like very few of them have a CAPTCHA or reCAPTCHA, right? They're usually just clicky. I mean, that's all codable. That's all scriptable, right? So I can't remember the specifics. Maybe someone out there knows, but like I think there are some devices out there, or people are working on, and there's probably enough, just search for it, where at least a few known ones, I don't know, maybe it's like Starbucks, McDonald's, something like that, that they know how to do it. So there you go, boom, shakalaka. How does it sound? We could put that on GitHub pretty quick. Cool. Anything else? Thanks, everyone.